Salamat, Kirby. Nagbabalik po tayo sa ating segment, sa The Search for the Next Chief Justice. Kasama ko po ngayon si Attorney JJ Atienza. Attorney, mukhang it's a big day today at maraming mga insiders from the CJ, for the Next Search for the Next CJ ang ini-interview natin. What are your insights on this?
Ito, Gion, ng hapon po sa aming mga manonood, napaka-interesante po ng mga nangyari, lalo na nung simula nung Martes, at painit ng painit yung mga interviews na nangyayari. And I heard na this morning, very interesting yung nangyari kay Dean Amado Valdez at kay Justice Antonio Carpio. So at this juncture, i-introduce muna natin yung ating tampok na guest ngayon, isang batang-batang historian at ako'y fan talaga nitong si Professor Xiao Chua. Professor, good afternoon
Maraming
po.
salamat sa lagi pag-imbita niyo sa akin. Hindi man ako abogado, sisikapin nating ibigay yung tinig ng bayan.
Siyempre, kasi naman talagang hangang-hanga kami sa insights mo sa mga nangyayari ngayon dito sa ating bansa.
Salamat.
Professor Xiao, matanong ka lang namin, ano ngayon yung reaction mo regarding dun sa interview na ipinakita kaninang umaga kay Dean Amado Valdez?
Well, it's classic Dean Amado Valdez dahil very opinionated. Kaso meron din pala siyang meron din pala siyang dating. No, na parang medyo nainis yata yung isang justice, no? So yun yung nasa Twitter kasi ako nakikinig. At yun din yung tutulong ng Twitter, kahit na hindi ka nanonood ng TV, nasa work kami, ginagawa kang papel, andun nasa gilid mo, no, lumalabas, no? Pero meron akong striking yung sinabi ni Dean Amado Valdez, yung isang quotation na sinabi niya kanina, no, na parang nakakatuwa din kung iisipin mo. He doesn't consider himself an outsider. Remember, Dean Amado Valdez is not a member of the court, not the Supreme Court. Therefore, he is deemed an outsider by many people. But he said, I don't consider myself an outsider because any lawyer is an insider, no, in the legal profession. No? So parang, ibig sabihin, sinasabi niya na bagamat outsider ako in the court, I am an insider in how the law works. So siguro magandang perspective.
Attorney JJ, bilang abogado, anong masasabi mo dito? Ano ba yung supervision talaga ng Korte Suprema sa mga abogado?
Alam mo, ang supervision ng Supreme Court, isang napakabigat na responsibilidad ito.
Yes.
Dahil hindi lamang iisang opisina o institusyon ang hawak mo, bagkus ito'y isang malaking kultura ng mga abogado. Siniset mo ngayon yung standard kung paano mo ba i-conduct, hindi lang yung buong korte, kundi yung sarili mo din.
Yes, bilang abogado at bilang tao.
At bilang example sa lahat ng
Yes.
legal practitioners dito sa Pilipinas. So napakabigat na katungkulan yung iniaatang sa'yo bilang Chief Justice.
Puntahan naman natin yung pangalawang interviewee sa araw na si Justice Tony Carpio. At siya nga ang sinasabi lang the front runner bilang pinaka-senior. And merong mga tanong sa kanya ukol sa mga desisyon na gawa niya before. And sabi nga niya, kapag attorney, kapag napasok ka pala sa Supreme Court, you are supposed to inhibit sa firm na kung saan ka nanggaling for a span of at least 10 years. At napag-usapan itong klase ng mga inhibitions na ginagawa. Ano ba talaga yung naging impluensya kapag may inhibition pero nandun ka sa loob and you're part of the body na pwedeng mag-discuss or pwedeng makipagtalakayan?
Alam mo, talagang open to question ito, lalo na kung ikaw yung isa sa mga senior na mahistrado. Walang maniniwala sa'yo na hindi na i-impluensyahan nung desisyon mo, yung kanilang sinusulat na desisyon. Pero kagaya nga sa kaso ni Justice Antonio Carpio, sabihin sana ni Chief Justice Carpio. Mali, pasensya na po. Ni Justice Carpio, hindi po natin maaalis ito dahil tandaan po natin na bago po siya naging mahistrado ng Supreme Court ay talagang ito ay isang brilliant lawyer na sa kanyang career, At hindi mo maiiwasan na sa dami ng kasong kanyang nahawakan, talagang masasangkot yung dati niyang opisina na pinanggalingan dito sa desisyon. So anong mga mangyayari sa atin ngayon? Itong si Justice Carpio, the least that he can do is to inhibit himself, meaning wala siyang participation sa desisyon na gagawin, wala siyang participation kung ano man yung gusto nilang pagdebatihan dito. He will stand as a mere observer, Hindi siya maaaring mag-impluwensya doon sa kanyang mga kasamahan. And that is a good thing and it is quite assuring. Pero syempre kung ikaw yung publiko, hindi ka rin basta maniniwala na, kasama mo sila sa loob . wala na tayong magagawa ron. Ang maganda lang doon is yung sabihin mo ng buong katotohanan, hindi ako ng impluwensya ng tao at hindi ko maiiwasan yun dahil parte na ito ng aking eksperyensya bilang isang abogado.
Pero Shao, tignan mo yung may hinahawakan ka dyang libro kanina, pinag-uusapan natin at talagang ang nabanggit si Justice Carpio dito sa mga usapin, sa mga nagaganap sa loob ng Korte Suprema. Pwede mo ba kaming bigyan ng historical background sa kung paano yung mga naging partisipasyon niya sa Korte nitong nakaraang 11 years, if I'm not mistaken, yan ang kanyang sinabing panunungkulan sa Korte Suprema?
Well, tandaan natin na si Justice Carpio, sa totoo lang, some people are saying na he's beholden to President Noynoy. No? Dahil nga parang favored siya. Pero sa totoo lang, magtataka ka din because he is actually Gloria Arroyo appointee. No? Isa sa mga noon pa
at
na
dati
in-appoint
pang
niya. Dati pa.
sa kanya, di ba?
Sa kanya. Doon pa sa dati niyang law office na kakasama
the
yan.
firm, the firm daw ito.
So, ang nakikita ko dito, parang sa hindi ko na masyadong nabasa pa yung iba pang mga decision particulars. Pero yung nakikita ko dito, parang hindi mo rin pwedeng sabihin na kapag in-appoint ka ng isang tao, yun na yung magiging beholden ka na doon. Ito yung pinapakita na meron ding counting independence, no? Dahil nga, yung Supreme Court, pwede kang i-appoint ng presidente, but you are selected by the JBC and probably that's why ito yung, may sistema tayo. May JBC tayo, sila yung nagsasala ng mga ipagpapangalan. Ang presidente lang pipili mula sa pangalan na yon. Parang nakikita natin na hindi ito totally a presidential prerogative and therefore there is room for independence. And this independence, yan ang issue ngayon dito sa pagpili na to. Bakit? Lahat itong mga taong ito, qualified lahat ito. Sa wala kang masasabi na hindi sila magaling, no? Lahat qualified. Pero ano ba yung pinakamatinding qualification baka na pipiliin? Yung pagiging independent. At dahil ang pagiging independent, ito yung katanggap-tanggap sa lahat. Kailangan ang pipiliing Chief Justice ay katanggap-tanggap sa lahat ng concern.
Matanong kita, Professor Shao, ano ba ang pulso ng mamamayang Pilipino? Kasi karamihan ng tanong dito, no, sino ba dapat ma-appoint? Isa bang outsider o isang insider na kagaya ni Justice Carpio?
Okay, tignan natin to sa dalawang perspektiba yan. Kapag ka inside, ako nung una naisip ko, baka mas maganda insider. Bakit? Kasi ayon nga sa aklat na ito, shadow of doubt, seniority ang nag-reign sa Supreme Court. Ibig sabihin, yung mas senior, yun ang mas iginagalang. Kung outsider yan, tapos hindi lang Chief Justice pa ng Supreme Court, baka lamunin ng buhay ng mga iba yan, ano? Hindi natin alam, no? Pero naisip ko din, meron din ganitong perspective. Why an outsider is ideal for Supreme Court Chief Justice? Kasi wala pa siya doon sa sistema na nandun sa korte ngayon. No? Maaari siyang makapagpasok ng bagong fresh perspective of leadership of the court and the judicial system and reform. No, na kayang i-reforma dahil idealistic pa, galing pa sa labas, hindi pa niya alam yung sistema, mas idealistic kumbaga at mas marang daring sa pag-implement ng reforms, no?
Totoo yan, Shao. Parang nung pinapakinggan mo pa lang from day one, from Dean Andres Bautista onwards, to today, the very ideal aspect of the Supreme Court comes out, di ba? Na maubos yung backlog of cases, mabilis ang disposition para sa mahirap, and you would see the points that all of the interviewees have given. So it brings you to a question na ano ba talaga dapat ang judicial reform sa konteksto natin ngayon? And ano bang background ang dapat nating tignan o susugan upang maintindihan yung ganitong klaseng mga reform?
Tandaan natin na si Jose Abueva mismo, a political scientist and former president of the University of the Philippines, sinabi niya at parang nagkatugma kami ng kaisipan dito natuwa ako kasi lagi ko sinasabi nung impeachment trial, hindi ba? Na the post-impeachment corona career could be to help the Supreme Court to reform itself. Bakit? Because only an outsider, only a former insider who's now outside now, can sabi ni Professor Abueva, can effectively say kung ano yung mali sa sistema. Parang magka-come out si former Chief Justice Corona na ito yung mali sa sistema, ito yung nakita kong mali, at including Chief Justice si Puno, Reynato Puno, magtulong daw sila. Yun yung sinasuggest niya. So parang outsider, parang from the inside, na ngayon naglo-look from the outside, yun lamang ang pwedeng makapag-reforma. Kasi tandaan natin na bagamat hindi ko kina-question yung dahil wala rin naman ako, just like all of us, mystery sa atin ang Supreme Court. I'm not saying na secret society yan.
Parang sa Batman, the League of Shadows.
Hindi ganun, But it's just that meron tayong pag-deference kasi to the Supreme Court na hindi natin sila masyadong pinapakialaman sa ginagawa nila. Pero makikita mo na kailangan din na ngayon, dahil nabukas na yung issue na kailangan lumabas accountability, yung magiging malinaw, tawag dito yung transparency na makita na rin kung ano yung ginagawa sa loob ng Supreme Court para makasama din yung tao, maintindihan din ng tao yung legal
Pero
system.
alam mo, Professor Shaw, although nag-agree ako doon sa sinabi mo, meron din po kasi kaming issue na inaalagaan sa legal profession. Dahil for the longest time, since time immemorial, ang Supreme Court po kasi ay isang impenetrable na institusyon at ni isa ho sa amin ay hindi basta-basta nakakalapit dito. Kung kaya't ang isa po talaga sa concern namin ngayon ay paano kung isang outsider ang ilagay mo dito? Tapos, yun pa, yung sinasabi nga ng mga kababayan natin baka naman daw mas delikado dahil karamihan din ng mga kandidato ngayon, mga kung hindi nag-witness ng impeachment trial, ay pro-impeachment. Hindi ba mas questionable pa rin yun?
Oo, at yun, maging questionable sa iba, pero kailangan pa rin makita yung track record ng isang tao. Although, hindi ko naman sinasabing pabor ako sa kanya at wala akong pinapaboran pa dahil tinitimbang ko yan. Halimbawa, si Justice Secretary Leila de Lima. Si Ma'am Leila, nung panahon ng CHR chair siya, ang nag-appoint naman sa kanya si President Gloria.
Of course.
Pero nakitaan pa rin siya ng independence. So parang it doesn't mean na, yun, again, lagi ko sinasabi, it can always change. It depends on, kaya ngayon mahalaga dahil yun ang hindi lang yung legal mind ng isang kandidato ang tinitignan. Nakakatuwa, maraming tanong na personal, mayroong tanong tungkol sa weight loss kahapon kay Justice Brion na nakakatuwa. Nakarelate tuloy ako kasi I can lose weight pala, ganyan, and stuff like that. Na parang pati yung personality, ano ba yung prinsipyo ng taong ito, ano yung core beliefs niya, ano yung working habits. Tandaan natin na hindi lang uupo sa trono ang mga Supreme Court justices and the Chief Justices of Supreme Court. Ito yung malaking trabaho. Libo-libong kaso ng buhay ng mga tao na kasalalay sa kanila.
Pero matanong nga kita, attorney, bilang abogado, outsider, insider?
Mahahalata nila yung limits ko. Pero hindi, kasi sa akin lang, actually, meron akong dalawang gustong-gusto ko sana makita dyan sa loob ng Supreme Court na outsider, isang academician at isang talagang pinagpipitagang may posisyon siya ngayon sa gobyerno. Pero, yun nga pero kung ako yung tatanungin mo talaga, mas gusto ko na rin sa loob sana manggaling kasi mas may moral ascendancy. At the same time, hindi mo na masyadong palalalain pa kung anong hidwaan o sugat yung nagkaroon ng Supreme Court pagkatapos nitong impeachment trial nga. So mas maganda para sa akin po, personal ko lamang po itong view, na sana ay manggaling sa loob at sundin natin yung tradisyon na ito. Ang sa atin lang, pagkatapos na manggaling na dito sa loob, yung kung ano yung natitirang bakante, yun na lang yung lagyan na outsider. Pero ang punong mahistrado, sana manggaling na lang sa loob na mayroong moral ascendancy doon sa kanyang mga kasama.
Pero lumalabas yung tanong palagi sa interviews, how important is an administrator or a manager as a Supreme Court Chief Justice important here in the ball game?
Ito, gaano ka-importante. Unang-una, kailangan bukod dun sa moral ascendancy, is somebody who can heal whatever hurt the Supreme Court has received from all this experience from the past months. Na sana man lang ay, yung sa kanila, they can live their, they can go on with their duties and obligations sa loob, bilang mga mahistrado, na magawa na nila yung kanilang trabaho ng free from all intrigues, free from all questioning. So, yun lang naman ang tingin kong gustong mangyari ng mga tao sa Supreme Court. At kami rin naman mga practitioners, yun na lang din yung gusto namin makita. Tigilan na yung divisiveness, tigilan na yung institutional hurt na nangyari. So, at tuloy-tuloy na lang sana.
Nabanggit din ito ng isa sa mga frontrunners kahapon. Nasabi ni Justice Abad yung aspeto ng forgiveness and moving on. And it speaks of, pag anong kino-compare ng, sabi ni Mama Alice, comparing those who were interviewed na insider and outsider, speaks of experience talaga, yung mga nasa loob. At alam nila kung paano. Kung the outsiders are very ideal, fresh yung ideas, yung mga insiders, experience, karanasan. Ito yung araw-araw na nararanasan ng korte. Sa major comparison, ano?
Totoo, kasi sila yung mas nakaka-experience gaano ba kahirap yung sinasabing transparency. Dahil ang tingin ng mga kababayan natin, pag sinabi mong transparency, abay lahat na lang gustong alamin sa loob ng Korte Suprema. Pero sa totoo po, when we say transparency, it means rendering a decision based on your conscience and based on the law.
Pero kaya marami rin na nag-speculate na gusto nilang basahin yung utak ng palasyo, no? Na sinasabi na baka hindi insider ang ilagay, kundi outsider. Bakit? Kasi yung mga insider, matagal na rin sila dyan sa korte na yan. Ngunit bakit hindi na-reforma? Hindi ako nagsabi niyan, ano? Mga naririnig ko lang din. Ngunit yun nga, talagang may mga pros and cons ang insider and outsider. Pero yung malaking con talaga ng isang outsider, talagang kailangan kasi to reform something, you have to know the institution. No? Pero again, it doesn't necessarily mean na wala nga silang alam. Kasi tandaan natin na many of these outsiders, administrators, deans of different top colleges, college of laws in this country, na they will also have an idea. Siguro din, alam mo naman ng mga Pilipino, we're a very oral people. Well, in short, bottom line, chismis. Ano? Mga chismis tayo. Yun yung value ng chismis. Malamang nakakaalam din sila ng ano. But of course, it will all boil down to this, yung moral integrity at yung legal soundness na makikita sa kanilang career, no? Malalimang pagbasa sa lahat ng kanilang ginawa at mga sinulat at mga conduct sa public.
Ito lang, Gio, tsaka Professor Shaw. Meron lang ako napansin, ano? Kasi pag sinasabi natin na outsider versus insider, parang tapos i-relate natin ngayon ito sa impeachment, parang ang sinasabi natin, ang hinusgahan ng impeachment ay yung buong Korte Suprema na as a whole, as an institution, na ang buong institusyon na nagkamali, kung kaya't kailangan natin ng panibagong leader para baguhin itong institusyon. Pero ang sa akin, ang pananaw ko kasi dito, buong institusyon nga po ba ang ating hinatulan ng impeachment o isang tao lamang? Ngayon kung isang tao lamang, siguro dapat natin pag-usapan sino ang karapat-dapat na pumuno lamang sa posisyong yon at hindi naman para alugin ang buong institusyon at i-overhaul. Sa palagay ba ninyo, ito rin yung dapat gawin? Dapat bang gamutin ang institusyong ito o palitan lamang yung nabakanting posisyon? Kasi nagkakaroon na ngayon ng parang walang delineation.
Alam mo, nabanggit to kanina ni Justice Carpio sa interview niya nung tinanong siya about the impeachment of Chief Justice Corona. Sabi nga niya, it's the person who was impeached and not the entire Supreme Court.
Exactly.
So, yun yung nagiging usapin at nagiging debate yan. Alam naman natin na may brawling issues na sinasabi nga nila between Justice Carpio and former Chief Justice Renato Corona. Pero nandun yung analysis na sinasabi nila, no? It's not the Supreme Court as a whole, pero tao o yung dating punong mahistrado ang tinanggal.
I look at it in a very mechanical way. Alam naman natin na lahat ng institusyon sa gobyerno ay hindi naman overnight ang pagbabago. May problema lahat yan. Meron sinasabing problema. So, ano yung i-fill up? Yung tao muna ang palitan natin. Pag nahil na niya yung peers, and then of course the whole Supreme Court, then we can start to talk about reforming the whole judiciary. Maglinis muna sila ng sarili nilang bakuran, no? That's that I'm saying na meron nga dapat linisin. Pero kung meron silang dapat ayusin, may mga hidwaan sila na naganap doon, they heal those wounds. Kaya nga nakikita din dito, meron ding issue dito ng yung sino yung pipiliin. Kasi kung senior Supreme Court Justice ito, this would be a very transitional. Parang pagpili ng Papa sa Roma yan Kapag after a very long papacy, pumipili sila ng matanda para madaling mapalitan eventually. Transition lang siya for another longer papacy. Sa Supreme Court, baka may ganun ding factor, di ba? Na kung itong mga senior justices like Carpio, ilan na lang ang years nila? 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years? Parang mas andali lang yung kanilang reform na magagawa. So why not a younger one na may longer term, no? May mga ganyang mga considerations.
Pero matanong ko nga, hingin ko sana yung experience as a lawyer and historical background. How effective is the JBC in selecting justices, the ombudsman, etc., etc.? Gaano ka-epektibo to?
Alam mo kasi itong JBC, isa itong, kumbaga isang makinarya na ginagamit ng gobyerno para makapiling maigi kung sino ang i-appoint na Justice of the Supreme Court or isang huwes ng lower court, sila lamang yung sumasala na sa palagay nila ito bang taong ito ay may i-introduce na reform sa hudikatura, gaano ka-sound siya mag-isip, ano bang mga balakin nito pagka iniupo namin ito. Pero syempre, itong JBC recommendatory lamang, tagasala lamang, at ang talagang nag-a-appoint ay ang presidente o meron pa nga, dadaan pa yan sa searchcom sa Malacanang. At napakahirap na trabaho yung ginagawa ng JBC kasi from the rough, from raw data, from raw candidates, sila po yung talagang nagsasala nito. Pero meron lang akong katanungan, Gio, pagka ba mas bata, hindi ba mas nakakatakot sa palagay ninyo na paano kung parang pagiging presidente lang yan too long for a 6-year presidency kapag ka napakasama mong presidente, too short kung napakaigi mo. Sa palagay mo ba'y walang danger na ganito pagdating naman sa Supreme Court?
Again, tignan mo yung mga sagot kanina, di ba? Ay, mga naging sagot ng netong mga nominado. Iba-iba yung varies. Kung si Secretary De Lima sinabi, I will finish it until the end of my term. Dean Andres Bautista would say yung 7-70 rule niya, it's either you reach 70 years old or 7 years lang manunungkulan. So may variance and iba-iba yung perspective ng mga taong tumitingin dito. Pero is it really effective siya? Sa Amerika, gano'n di ba?
Again, ano yan Oo nga, kasi sa Amerika, walang retirement ng mga justices. They have to, kahit na uugod-ugod na sila, naka-wheelchair, pwede pa rin sila na nandoon. Pero ito, it will only be a problem if we elect, or if they put, or they choose a bad Chief Justice. Doon lang siya magiging problem kung mahaba. Kung mabuti naman, walang problema.
Okay.
Ngayon, punta naman tayo sa loob na ng Supreme Court, Gio, Professor Shawa,
sa pag-imbita niyo ulit.
Tignan po natin kung ano yung mangyayari sapagkat isasalang na po yata si Justice Teresita J. Leonardo de Castro, isa rin pong insider ng Supreme Court.
Leonardo de Castro of the Supreme Court, and Dean Cesar L. Villanueva of the Ateneo de Manila Law School, and Senior Founding Partner Villanueva, Gabionza, and De Santos Law Offices. May we request Dean Cesar Villanueva to proceed to the holding area while the interview on Associate Justice Teresita de Castro is being conducted. Thank you.
I do not know how to address again Justice de Castro. She was my PJ in the Sandigan Bayan. So anyway, would you mind? I'll just call you Justice Tess. Okay. So any manifestation, ma'am, before we start with the questioning?
May I be allowed to make a short opening statement?
As we did to the other candidates, we limited the opening statement to 3 minutes. Can you do it in 3 minutes?
I hope so.
Okay. Go ahead then, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman and members of the Judicial and Bar Council. Should I have the good fortune of being appointed Chief Justice, I will bring to this lofty position my 39 continuous years of service in government, 19 years in the Office of the Chief State Counsel of the Department of Justice, and 20 years in the judiciary. I joined the government and rose from the ranks through devotion to duty, integrity, commitment to excellence, without reliance on any personal or political connections, but always with the assistance of the divine providence, the unseen hand which charted the course of my career in government. It is my long years of service in the government which helped shape my judicial philosophy and my reform agenda. My government service started when I was still under bar. I took the screening examination here in the Supreme Court, and I was hired as a law clerk with a salary of 500 pesos a month. That was in February of 1973. Later on, I served in the Office of Chief Justice Fred Ruiz Castro. So what are the lessons that I learned while I was in the Supreme Court during that early time in my career? I was already at the time as early on understood the importance of preserving judicial independence, and it was through my short encounter with Chief Justice Roberto Concepcion. The wholesome working environment in the Supreme Court at that time also fostered the spirit of professionalism and my adherence to integrity in public service. It was also during my stint in the office of Fred Ruiz Castro, the former Chief Justice, that I come to realize that docket congestion is the most serious problem of the judiciary. At that time, there were already 400,000 cases pending in court, from the lowest level up to the Supreme Court. And Chief Justice Fred Ruiz Castro was very much concerned of these clogged court dockets. So he proposed to President Marcos the creation of a presidential commission which studied alternative modes of dispute settlement, and that gave birth to the Katarungang Pambarangay Law, Presidential Decree 1508, which I helped draft during my service in the Supreme Court under Chief Justice Fred Ruiz Castro. The neighborhood conciliation system proved to be very effective. I know this for a fact because for a long period of time during my stay in the Department of Justice, I was a member of the Lupong Tagapamayapa. Later on, I was recruited by the Chief State Counsel whom I met in the Katarungang Pambarangay project to work in the Department of Justice. As I was first hired as State Counsel 1, then I became State Counsel 2, State Counsel 3, 4, 5, 6, then Assistant Division Chief, then Division Chief, and finally Assistant Chief State Counsel. In the Department of Justice, I served 8 Secretaries of Justice, beginning from Vicente Abad Santos, Macaraig, and so forth, until the last one was Secretary Chofisto Gingona. And it was during the incumbency of 3 presidents, President Ferdinand Marcos, President Corazon Cojuangco Aquino, and President Fidel Ramos, who appointed me to the Sandigan Bayan. During the incumbency of President Marcos, I was a junior lawyer, so I worked in the background. But I had a golden opportunity of working directly with President Corazon Aquino and President Fidel B. Ramos, who awarded me a Presidential Medal of Merit for my exemplary service to the government during the peace negotiations. At the Department of Justice, I have worked on diverse and significant legal and constitutional issues confronting the political branches of the government during tranquil and normal times and during perilous and trying times in our national history, from the effectivity of the 1973 Constitution, the Freedom Constitution, or the Proclamation Number 3, which was promulgated by President Corazon Aquino during the existence of the revolutionary government, and under the 1987 Constitution. What are the lessons that I learned at the Department of Justice? First, it is loyalty to the institutions of government, to the Constitution and the law. I have learned through my long service in the government that public officials come and go, but institutions remain. So we should all be loyal to the institutions of government, the Constitution that gives it life and substance, and to the laws that gives it form. Second, I also learned that it is important that there be stability and predictability in our legal system. The opinions of the Secretary of Justice, although persuasive in character, establish precedents or rules intended to guide future actions. So it is imperative that legal questions are consistently decided in accordance with law, so that persons similarly situated can be guided in their action and expect the same ruling in the future. This is important for stability and predictability in our legal order. The third lesson that I learned is that the political branches of the government are equally concerned with the constitutionality of their actions. The Secretary of Justice as Attorney General renders opinion for all heads of government, departments, bureaus and offices, the Office of the President, members of Congress, constitutional commissions. And in the course of this work, I came to realize that legislators, together with the President, are so much concerned with the constitutionality of their actions. And that is precisely why they asked the Secretary of Justice if their actions are within constitutional bounds. It is only when actual cases are elevated to the court that the power of judicial review is invoked and exercised. So in the first place, the political branches of the government, Congress, and the Office of the President would have the first crack of determining the applicability of the Constitution to whatever decisions they may take in the course of their exercise of their functions. They have all the vital information that they need in making policy decisions. The President especially has access to security and intelligence information, technical studies, empirical data, which are not available to the court. And therefore, it is for this reason that I believe that the judiciary should, in the exercise of its expanded power of judicial review, should exercise circumspection and utmost care.
How many more minutes, Justice Tess?
Just maybe 2 minutes, Your Honor.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, sige.
So I
Go
also
ahead.
learned
With that promise of 2 minutes.
2 long minutes. I also understood the importance of technology. At first, we were using electric typewriters. Then we shifted to computers and word processors. It was a difficult adjustment, but it turned out to be very good in the long run. So I believe that we should emphasize also the introduction of technology in government service. I had greater exposure to this when I was promoted to the Sandigan Bayan and later on to the Supreme Court. So at the Sandigan Bayan, what did I learn? You know, I was not from the judiciary. I came from the Department of Justice. But my work in the Department of Justice helped a lot in the discharge of my functions in the Sandigan Bayan. And that is where I learned that experience really is the best teacher. So when I took over the Coco Levy case, in 6 months, I was able to decide that case the decision of that case has long been delayed. It has been in court for 16 years already. Now, because of my exposure to legal issues, legal problems in the Department of Justice, it took me a very short period of time to dispose of that case. I also was able to harness the legal knowledge that I gained in the Department of Justice and was able to use it for the benefit of all judges and all members, together with the justices in the judiciary. The step increments, which is allowed by law since 1982, was not applied to the judiciary. It was already 1997 when I joined the judiciary, and that was the only time that I initiated the process of applying this step increment to all members of the judiciary, and true enough, it was approved by the Supreme Court, and because of that, all judges and justices now enjoy the step increment, which allowed them to have a salary of the next salary grade without being promoted, simply by their long service in the judiciary. Now, I also learned that the judiciary is not for the weak of heart. It's not for the timid, and for one who is afraid to take not only a great responsibility, but a responsibility which may cause a tremendous personal consequence, not only to oneself, but also to one's family. I went through this in the course of my work in the Department of Justice. So I was given the fortitude and the courage, without any fear of consequence, to deal with cases involving powerful and influential persons. I have understood since then that public office is to be wielded for the common good and not for personal gratification. I learned too that keen understanding of the government bureaucracy is important. Having risen from the ranks, I understood the plight of government employees and their sensibilities, even those in the lowest echelon of government. So as presiding justice, I avoided any appearance of extravagance. I was very judicious in the expenditure of public funds. And in my 4 years as presiding justice, I did not purchase an official vehicle for myself. I just used the vehicle that I inherited from my predecessor. And that was until I was promoted to the Supreme Court. I saw to it that promotions and allocations of court resources were based on objective and uniform criteria. I treated my colleagues with courtesy and respect so that I can motivate them to cooperate with me in the judicial reform programs that are being undertaken at that time in coordination with the Supreme Court. And this earned me the Supreme Court Judicial Reform Award from Chief Justice Hilario Davide. I also knew that it is important to be able to reach out to other government institutions and agencies, because it is only in this way that you can expand your vision and perspective and be able to avail of the resources that can improve work efficiency. In the Supreme Court, I'd like to inform the JBC that I am now the working chair of the First Division. I have been elected by my peers as vice working chair of the Committee on Ethics and Ethical Standards. And I chair 3 more committees: the Management Committee of the Judicial Reform Project, the JRSP Working Committee, Component A, Improving Case Adjudication and Access to Justice. I'm chair of the Committee on Computerization and Library. I am co-chair of the Halls of Justice Coordinating Committee. I'm chair of the Committee on Gender Responsiveness in the Judiciary. I'm chair of the Special Committee to draft the rules on sexual harassment. I am member of the Committee of Internal Rules of the Supreme Court and of the Committee on Publication of Court Systems Journal and the Supreme Court Committee on Public Information. The Management Committee of the JRSP coordinates the implementation of all the components of the Judicial Reform Project. And I am committed to pursue these components of the reform project, which are improving case adjudication and access to justice, enhancing institutional integrity, strengthening the institutional capacity of the judiciary, and the stakeholder support for reform and program management office. That would include the IBP, civil society, and the community. Apart from all this, I am now the president of the Philippine Women Judges Association since 2009. And within this period of time that I have assumed the presidency of the PWJA, I have brought the PWJA to international prominence, which led to my being chosen as the President-elect of the International Association of Women Judges, a world organization with about 108, with members from about 108 countries. So, Honorable Chairman and members of the Judicial and Bar Council, I would be ready for work from day one if I am nominated and appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Is that all, Justice Tess?
Yes.
Yeah, it was indeed a long 2 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Now, Attorney Cayusa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Justice De Castro.
Good afternoon.
Actually, most of the questions that I had prepared have already been answered with your presentation, but I just have a few more. As the Supreme Court Committee Chair on Gender Responsiveness in the Judiciary, have you had, I know that you have had several seminars on gender sensitivity and responsiveness, but have you had a chance to monitor how effective these seminars and this orientation have been in promoting gender sensitivity?
We have a committee which is in charge of that. And I think right now they are trying to come up with the criteria to be able to determine that. But as of now, we try to see to it that the Supreme Court is gender sensitive. For instance, we look at the number of employees and see what is the ratio between women and men. And we also see that if we want to find out if our employees are following the rules that we have put in place, to see to it that in the court the employees and officials are gender sensitive, like in the use of their language. We have come up with a gender sensitive language book, manual, and we want to find out if they're following this. Even the court has come up with rules as to how we will address women and children who are victims of crimes.
Thank you, Justice, because I know that it's very active in the Supreme Court, but perhaps there is need to monitor how the effects, if any, on the lower courts. Moving on, you are the president of the Philippine Women Judges Association, and there are more and more women entering the judiciary. Proof of that is that more than half of those whom we interview are actually women. What programs or what do you think can be done in order to effectively harness the resources that you have among women judges in order to promote the administration of justice?
Before I answer your question, I would like to, the PWJA would like to thank the JBC and the President for the numerous appointments and promotions that our women judges had so far been given. In fact, we find it difficult now to look for replacement, because every time there's a movement, we have to replace the directors and the officers. And that was because of the numerous appointments and promotions of our women judges. Going to your question, you're asking about what we can do to...
What projects have you done in the PWJA to harness this? Well, it's good that actually we do consider a lot of women judges for promotion and all. I mean, of course, based on merit, not just on gender. But I would like to know if you have other ways of harnessing, their capabilities towards helping in the administration of justice.
Yes, in fact, we hold regular meetings, and during our meetings, we discuss how we can help improve the administration of justice. We, not only in terms of the performance of judicial work, but in the declogging of prisons. the decongestion of prisons, extending assistance to prisoners in order to alleviate their plight. We have also professional development projects for the judges. In the PWJA, we see to it that our women judges are able to avail of available opportunities to improve their skills and their knowledge. And we were able to send some of our women judges abroad to study on a scholarship and also to attend domestic seminars for professional development.
Thank you, Justice. Now, on another note, well, actually, you outlined several proposals in your opening statement as you gave a summary also of your career. Among the proposals that you stated in your opening statement, which, well, although you were not able to complete the presentation, we were given copies prior to your interview. Which would you consider a priority?
Improving the case adjudication. As you know, as I have mentioned earlier, this was the congestion in the court's docket was a problem in the 70s when I was still a young lawyer. And now it's already the 21st century and still we have this problem. And the cases from 400,000 in the 70s has gone up to 700,000 now. And so I think that while we have been implementing reforms, I believe that we need to do more. And there are a lot of measures that we can undertake to be able to improve the adjudication of cases and make sure that we can speedily dispense justice. It is there are several ways. One, we can look at the rules of procedure and see how we can reform our court procedure to be able to speed up the disposition of cases. Our problem when I was in the Sandigan Bayan, one major cause of delay was Rule 65. So we had workshops on how we can limit the number of cases being elevated to the court with the use of Rule 65. We have also introduced a lot of measures here to improve the rules of court. We have speedy ways of dealing with the small claims cases, not only through improvement of the rules, but also through computerization. We can also make use of the alternative dispute resolution mechanism. Mediation, as you very well know, is still at its early stage, and there is a lot more room for improvement in terms of the professional development of the mediators. They are given trainings, but I think they are not really that in-depth. They need to have, I think, more extensive training, and there will be a lot of these available, not only here in the Philippines, but abroad. And there's also a problem about improving their salaries or giving them more salaries. And aside from that, the problem with mediation is that there is no regular budget for it. So we're relying on the fees. And